Hello again, fourth graders, and welcome to our Writer's Workshop for today. As we begin session 5, we are going to be talking about something called elaboration, which are the details that let people picture what happened long ago and far away. Yesterday, we talked about the fact that teaching can be a way to prime the pump for writing. How many of you wrote more than a page last night? Maybe more than 2 pages. Perhaps 3 pages. Just as it's great to write fast and furious, it's also important to pause, to reread, and to rethink what you've written. An artist sketches a portrait quickly and then pauses to take a look over their work. They ask, "How do I like it?" Sometimes the artist keeps going. Sometimes the artist changes things. Shifting between writing and rereading is important, no matter what kind of text you are writing. You'll always want to pause, to reread your writing, and to think, what's not so good that I can fix up? When you reread a draft of your writing, you will find that you've written without a lot of detail. One of the best ways to improve any piece of writing is to add details. Historians often try to give the details that help readers picture what happened in a long ago and faraway time. Jean Fritz, a famous writer of history books, once said, "I dote on small details. In researching Ben Franklin, I read in one book after another that Franklin learned 10 swimming tricks. What were they?" She couldn't rest until she knew what those 10 tricks were. She just had to know. After a long search, she uncovered all of the tricks, including one trick that involved Ben Franklin cutting his toenails underwater. Another of Ben Franklin's tricks was swimming with his legs tied together. Jean Fritz's obsession with details was not just her way. If you look at most famous writers of history, many of them use details to make history come alive. Think of the I Survive series and all the great details that are in those books, or the Magic Treehouse books, for example. When a writer of informational books wants to elaborate in this way, it helps to pause and to say, what do I need to learn about? The writer shifts from being a writer to being a researcher, looking for the details that bring people, places, and events to life. One way to get at those details is to be like a magnet, letting interesting details stick to you. Sometimes details aren't important facts. They could just be interesting or quirky facts and details. A bricklayer builds with bricks. A writer builds with detail. Details are one of the most important materials you will use in any writing that you do, so make note of detail as you read. Here's Robert Sessions' eyewitness account of the Boston Tea Party, recounted in Meltzer's The American Revolutionaries book. Everything was as light as day. By the means of lamps and torches, a pin might be seen lying on the wharf. I went on board where they were at work, and took hold with my own hands. I was not one of those who disguised themselves as Indians, but was a volunteer, the disguised men being largely men of family and position in Boston. Although there were many people on the wharf, entire silence prevailed. No clamor, no talking. Nothing was meddled with but the teas on board. After having emptied the hold, the deck was swept clean and everything put in its proper place. What details do you notice? What did those details make you think? There were a lot of details here, weren't there? Very, very specific. The details, not just one detail, but several details, can click together like pieces of a puzzle to create the bigger picture. We get a picture of how at the Boston Tea Party the little guys took big risks. But then the entire story of the American Revolution is about little guys taking risks. The big idea is carried in the small details. I'm going to ask you to reread the last bit of writing you did yesterday and notice how many details you've included. Notice places where your writing seems a bit bare bones. When you find a place that needs more details, star it so you know to go back and add more later. Finding and including details, especially interesting or quirky ones, will help make your writing come to life. From this day forward, fourth graders, always remember that details matter as much in informational writing as in personal narrative writing. It's easy to get lost in the process of looking for one detail, and before you know it, writing time has slid by. Balance looking for the details that will bring your writing to life and pushing yourself to write using all you know about informational writing. An important tip about note-taking: good note-takers don't just write fact after fact. No, instead they pause, giving themselves space to grow ideas about those facts. They share thoughts and ideas they have about the facts. John Adams, a well-known patriot, was one of the lawyers who defended the British soldiers. He worked hard to convince the jury that the British soldiers were just defending themselves. In the end, the judge decided there wasn't enough evidence to find the soldiers guilty, so they were released. Some things to think about. I'm not going to necessarily have you write these down, but some interesting prompts to make you think. And maybe you can share out loud to a person who's with you, mom or dad, brother or sister, or just think about this for a little bit. This is important because, or this is surprising because, or all in all, what I want to say is that perhaps pause the video here so that you can think about this paragraph about John Adams. When you're ready, restart. Well, fourth graders, when you read as writers, the first step is to value the details. We've talked a lot about details today. The next step is to wonder, to ask questions as you're doing here. As you collect notes and find something interesting, you want to give yourself the space to grow some thinking. You may want to reread your notes from time to time, boxing out intriguing parts, and then do this work to grow some ideas. Some people also benefit from locating a picture related to your topic. I certainly would encourage you to do that, especially in your books that you're looking up on EPIC. Details will become important in a new way starting tomorrow, in tomorrow's session, because you'll be writing stories that teach readers about your topic, and you'll want to situate your stories in the world of those times. You'll need to know details about the people's daily lives. You can collect details from reading texts and by observing. You see, history writers can't observe the past. They're not living at that time. But you can study documents, paintings, pictures or photographs, letters, and the like. Study those pictures closely. Think of it almost as a secret map of the times, one that tells clues to those times, clues that have miraculously survived the generations and ended up in your hands. Tell each other, through your writing, the details about the time period that you can detect from the clues in those pictures. What do you see in the pictures that you can add to what you're learning? Well, all of these details about daily life in this era bring to mind the stories of people who lived through the events we're learning about. These people had decisions to make, choices to wrestle with. One way information writers make history come alive is by telling the stories of people who lived in a particular era. Maybe you can think of one possible small moment story you might tell related to your topic. What might have been the decisions and choices that a person who lived through your event wrestled with? Could one of those become a story? Just some things to think about. Now, we certainly have given you a lot of ideas for your writing time today. And I want to send you off, writers and fourth grader writers, as you think about all these different ideas and things. Let's focus in particular on details. Let's elaborate. And I know there was a line in our session today about bare bones writing. And I want you to look at what your writing has been the last couple of days. So today I really want you to focus on adding some details. If you feel you're in pretty good shape detail-wise, then I want you to do what we did in the last part of our session, and that's talk about maybe a picture or photograph that you can look at that deals with your subtopic. Is there some information within that picture that you can share with us as the person who is following your writing? You have a lot to consider, a lot of different choices to make. You decide how best to handle this today as you work on elaborating, making more details in your writing, or perhaps finding a picture, or maybe doing both. But try to add as many more details through your writing as you can today as you develop your ideas. Good luck, fourth graders, and please get started.